All right, welcome to Bet the Edge. I'm Jay Croucher here as always with Drew Dinsick. We're recording late on Thursday. Today we're going to talk a little bit about the conference title game, some, concluding thoughts. We'll give out our best bets across those games. We will talk a little Australian Open now that we know the women's final matchup. And then we'll close out with NBA Most Improved Player, which is always a bit of a wonky award. But speaking of awards, Drew, first, little PFWA recap. For those who don't know, the Pro Football Writers Association, they've been giving out their awards all this week. These are not the awards that we bet on. That's the Associated Press, and that's what will be handed out at the NFL Honors on February 8th. But these PFWA awards, they've historically been pretty predictive of who will win the AP awards. For anyone who doesn't know, I think it's about 300 voters, and they're all basically beat writers who cover the league at large or who cover individual teams. So that is the background. And a lot of the AP voters, it's not like a one-to-one. Like there are, there are TV executives, there are announcers who vote on the AP awards, and I think that the PFWA skews more towards beat writers, but still it's huge overlap. It's very indicative, and we've got a lot of those results now, Drew. So it's been pretty much chalk across the board. I think that to me, the three interesting ones are Myles Garrett, Defensive Player of the Year, Will Anderson, Defensive Rookie of the Year, and then D'Amico Ryans, Coach of the Year today. Do you feel like those three awards are kind of wrapped up for those three guys?
Ryan's is the one wild card because you look through the years at the coaching voting and it is a little scattershot, right? Like there's not a coalescing behind one candidate really any given year. So I'm always going to be sweating the Coach of the Year until it gets announced. But, I agree with your reads in the markets otherwise. And I'd be lying if I said I wasn't refreshing everyone who I know has a vote to see if they just tip their hand on Garrett DPOY so I can sleep a little easier at night. Not that it's like life-changing money, but like I would really like to not have to sweat that one. It would be great to know if Garrett's feeling pretty confident he's going to get the award. I would like to be a little more confident, but no, the Coach of the Year still is the one that I'm the most intrigued by. And, they listed the finalists, and I guess like no one cares for Shane Steichen enough to even give him down ballot votes. Really? Okay. All right. Like, no, Matt LaFleur too. Like, these guys, I know that I'm shading it a little bit on Matt LaFleur with how well he did in, upsetting the Cowboys, but, he got a team of absolute, kids to play well enough to go to the playoffs. Like that's pretty impressive what they did offensively. So I was a little surprised that he's not even invited to the ceremony in Las Vegas. But are you on the same page with me on Coach of the Year, or do you think it's more of a done deal?
I think it's more of a done deal, and the reason why is that one, I take your point entirely. This is it's a much more scattershot award. It's probably the most subjective award outside of comeback player, though usually there does end up being consensus there. The thing is that one, I think D'Amico, from everything that I have heard and seen from actual voters, I think D'Amico already had a sizable lead. Just when you look at also what people were saying the week leading up to the Colts win and then the immediate aftermath, I think that certainly there was a wave of D'Amico support. A number of people who were going to vote Stefanski flipped to D'Amico, and D'Amico already had a strong base. And then with the PFWA, every winner since 1993 of the PFWA award for Coach of the Year has also won the AP award. Outside of randomly Tony Sperano lost to Mike Smith in 2008, but he lost by one vote in the AP. So again, that stuff is a little skewed because, normally often there is just a runaway winner. Like say Mike Vrabel a couple of years ago, he was always going to win both votes, but still I think that's pretty instructive. So I don't think it's 100% for D'Amico, but I don't think it's that far off. Now, I'm generally pretty guarded with my optimism around an awards position. I was sweating out Mikal Bridges, hoping that he wouldn't beat Marcus Smart, Defensive Player of the Year, till the bitter end, still saying that there was, a little bit of a chance that Smart lose and completely torpedo me. But I am, and I'm in your boat with wanting Garrett to win. I think that's done, and I'm not sweating that. I think that one is over between the PFWA award, between getting 40 All-Pro votes to 32, between what everything voters have said. What is third on a lot of ballots? And I think that Garrett is going to be pretty close to top 2 on he'll be top 2 on all ballots but 10, given that he was first team All-Pro on 40, 50.
Yeah.
So
I'm hanging my hat pretty big time on that data point, honestly. But like, we've constructed, when it comes to defensive player of the year, the idea of somebody just looking at it statistically and being like, well, what was the sack leader? Why would I put him behind Garrett? Like, people will do silly stuff like that. Yep. I don't know. I think I would say that, at least from who I have heard has votes this year, it feels like they are kind of moving the voting block in a really good direction. Like, more and more people who are voting are really like, kind of at the cutting edge of the sport and less, kind of entrenched in their regional niche. Right. And I think that part of it is what gets you the weirder results, where people didn't, hey man, I watched every AFC South game. I didn't see any of the AFC North. TJ Watt had more sacks. We'll go him. Right. Like, there's less of that and more of sort of, kind of broad totalitarian coverage of, people who are kind of in that vein, who are voting now. So I think cautiously optimistic, we're going to have a fun night recapping that one.
Yes, and we'll be doing that live in Las Vegas. Will Anderson, I think to me we'll talk about comeback player in a sec quickly, but Will Anderson, the fact that he won the PFWA award, the fact that he's polling pretty well with actual voters, I don't think he's a lock. I think there's still some uncertainty there, but I think he is, north of 85% to win that award too, just with how Jalen Carter and the Eagles finished their season, and the fact that I don't think Kobe Turner is. I think that a lot of people still don't fully realize who he is, and I think that he's going to be off ballot a chunk, with Devin Witherspoon or Joey Porter third or whoever. Comeback player of the year for the PFWA gets announced Friday, 1 p.m. Eastern. Now, they have a most improved player award too, which dilutes things a little bit. Although for this year, I don't think, like Mayfield and Flacco, I don't think they're really most improved cases, because they already had a previous pretty high level. I would think that most improved goes to someone like Deron Bland or Kyron Williams or something like that. So I think that it should be pretty representative of what the final vote will be, but that will be interesting, because I do think there's a chance that Mayfield could get Hamlin, though I think Hamlin's still a pretty decent favorite. Anyway, we will break that down in due course. Now, looking forward to the games this weekend, Chiefs, Ravens, Lions, 49ers, been a little bit of movement towards both of the favorites in this one. Has your mind shifted on either of these games?
No, but let's kind of comment on the markets, because that's maybe the more interesting part. Last time we talked about these games, we had relatively low liquidity, low limits on the totals. We've gotten since limits starting to come up, and not a lot of action there. So I think, if anything, seeing at some of the sharper shops, no one's really interested to come with me on over in that Chiefs Ravens game. A lot of sentiment on no, this is the right total. If anything, it should be 44. So that has me a little bit concerned, and gonna try to talk to some sharp people who I respect in the totals game, because frankly, I'm more of a sides player than a totals player, and just kind of get a sense of if there's something that I missed there. But also interesting to me that they're among the shops that will take will write the biggest bets on this for now. It seems like Circa wants to write Chiefs, and it seems like some of the offshore shops want to write Ravens. And that may just be a little bit of a sentiment of there is a, split in the market. Some people feeling like this is a perfectly fair line. Some people that want a little bit of action on Chiefs, and some that want Ravens. I still think the Chiefs are the right side. I think 3 is probably the correct number. And I'm going to ride out my Chiefs at 4-1, 4 plus 440. To win the AFC bet that we made before the playoffs started, and granted made it at the time thinking there was a realistic chance that the Bills weren't going to get in, and that the Chiefs might play the Steelers. Like, there was a lot of things that were potentially, had nothing to do with the Chiefs getting better that would have made that a better, higher equity position. Now, ultimately, them getting here and being, plus 174, plus 175 ish on the money line is, I feel pretty solid about that. But fundamentally, the matchups, the injuries, nothing has surprised me so far. And I guess I think this is realistically just going to come down to, the number one, the Chiefs being able to backfill from a run blocking and a pass protection in the absence of Joe Thuney. It's going to come down to, just in general, how do they do on run defense, and do they turn, our runs that are consistently successful against them? Do they keep them from getting explosive, or are there some explosive runs? And in general, does the reintegration of Mark Andrews change anything about the passing offense for the Ravens, to the good or the bad? And for me, I kind of look at everything, and I see these two experienced quarterbacks, two quarterbacks with multiple MVP seasons under their belt. And whether it's not really spooky, and relatively healthy skill position groups, and I'm still scratching my head as to why we're looking at a 44.5 as a total. Definitely a reasonable game state that, if the Ravens are doing well early, if they are out to a lead, if they put some scoreboard pressure on Mahomes, then I think this goes over. If this is a score and answer, I think this could go over by margin. The one game state that I think kind of marries into or leans into an under is if the Ravens offense just no shows and the Chiefs have a decent lead at halftime and just play keep away and shorten the game. And I think that's by far the least likely game state here. So, ultimately, there's a lot of scope here for the Ravens to win by margin. There's plenty of scope for this to be a shootout and come down to, who has the ball last, maybe even overtime. And so I'm going to sit tight on my over, even though nobody wants to come with me.
Yeah, I think my concern with the Chiefs is that I know how good they've looked on offense the past 2 weeks, but I still can't shake someone who's pretty invested in the Chiefs in the back half of this season. Just the fact that they had absolutely nothing at home against the Raiders on Christmas. The fact that against pretty vulnerable Eagles and Packers pass defenses, they really couldn't do that much. And I don't think this has just magically turned into a top 3-4 offense overnight, even though they have Mahomes and he has an extra gear in the playoffs, which seems like it's pretty quantifiable at this point. But I just think that with the fact that the Dolphins had no edge rushers and were just going cover zero repeatedly, with the fact that the Bills had no linebackers and Rasul Douglas seemingly couldn't move and they were just super banged up and had no resistance whatsoever, I skew more to that inflating the Chiefs. And I do think there is an element of Kelsey just looks better and more athletic, having more rest, having not had to play the final week. Mahomes has another gear, and that's being surfacing. Rashee Rice has gotten better progressively this season, but I just don't think that they are, back to the offense that they were last season. And I worry a bit that the Ravens, just with an extra day of rest, getting healthier, looks like Marlon Humphrey will be back, Mark Andrews will be back, that ultimately, and also just the fact the Ravens have the best run offense in football, and the Chiefs' run defense can't do anything. They got completely destroyed. So for all of those reasons, I feel like I know what's going to happen, Drew. The Niners are going to beat the Lions. The Ravens are going to beat the Chiefs. Every person in America is going to pick Baltimore to beat San Francisco in the Super Bowl, because that's what happened on Christmas. And then my boy Brock Purdy is going to ball out and give the MVP performance that he should have on Christmas. And the Niners are going to be Super Bowl champions. I feel very convinced in the reality of eventuating.
So I don't disagree with you. The most likely thing is the Ravens win this game. But it sounds almost like you're leaning Ravens at 3.5. Am I right?
I mean, Mahomes is still pretty scary, but I think at 4, which it is at 4, some spots now, like you mentioned, Circa's 4 flat, and I'd probably be leaning Chiefs there, and at the earlier 3 in the week, I'd probably be leading Ravens. So
yeah, I should own it up about this game. I did lose a bet already on this one. I didn't think we would ever see Mahomes as more than a 3-point dog in the playoffs in my lifetime, and here we are. So this is a little shocking. I mean, obviously there was a chance for there to be road games, but I just felt like 3 was going to always be the stopping point for Mahomes support. And here you go, you can have a bigger number than that. So,
anything quickly on Lions 49ers. This line is, it was 6.5 earlier in the week. It is now basically -7, -120 on that across the board. Deebo Samuel practiced and was limited, so he's trending in the right direction. Looks like Frank Ragnow and Jonah Jackson are both banged up, which is a problem. Do you think that this is the right number?
Kind of assuming Jonah Jackson's out and Ragnow is in, but potentially limited. And that spells trouble against a fully healthy pass rush for the Niners. And I think the game still, kind of is contingent on that unit winning. If you are generating quick pressure on Goff, then the entire Lions offense comes unraveled, in my opinion. And if they can do that early in this game and then let their offense just kind of wreak havoc, which they should against this defense, then all of a sudden you're setting up a pretty positive game state for the Niners, and they play pretty well with the lead. So not exactly scared about my Niners bets in this one, and pretty delighted to see all of this market support. It has been one-way traffic Niners, and if that's because of the Deebo Samuel news only, I'm less excited about the support, because I don't actually know that he's like I don't know that he has a dollar, like a meaningful impact on this particular spread. But the rest of the Niners being relatively healthy, and just in general, this coming down to their pass rush being able to win, and kind of a tight band of them getting to 30 points has got me pretty excited to be riding with the Niners at home. So let's get a little home field advantage. Let's get Brock Purdy back in winning mode, and let's get home with -7.
Yep. Okay. Well, my best bet for Championship Sunday, staying in that game, I'm going with, just like last week, took a secondary Lions receiver over mid-30s yard total in Jameson Williams, going back to that this week, but this time with Josh Reynolds. He is 35.5 receiving yards is his number. I'm taking the over on that. Reynolds, the past 2 weeks, he's played 86 and 78% of the snaps. With Jameson Williams, I mean, the fact that the bet got home was a little bit fortunate last week, given that he wasn't super involved. Now, they don't really need to throw the ball that much in the second half. I think they will need to throw the ball in the second half of this game because they are trending towards being 7.5-point dogs. Perfect conditions of Niners defense that look pretty vulnerable against Jordan Love and the Packers. And I think that Reynolds just being at 35.5 for the wide receiver 2 in this offense. I think that the market is skewing a little bit more towards Sam Laporta than it should be in terms of just the distribution of Goff's passing yards, because Laporta, he just seems to match up extremely well against the Bucs. He had double-digit targets when they played in Week 6 against the Bucs. He had double-digit targets last week, and just when Goff is blitzed, he goes to St. Brown or he goes to Laporta, and the Bucs, they blitz a ton. And also the Bucs, they can't defend tight ends. Juwan Johnson had an out-of-body experience with them towards the end of the season. So I think that is a little bit skewed. I think this is going to be more Reynolds in this one. So I'll take the over there. And your best bet is also in this game.
Yep. Niners -7. It's getting juicy. The question is, if you wake up and you're listening to this tomorrow and it's 7.5, would I still advocate for it? Yes. But honestly, if you wake up tomorrow morning and 7 -115 is not bettable, I'm fine looking for alts here. Sell out to 10.5, sell out to 13.5. I think there's a long tail here where the Niners win pretty comfortably. And honestly, that marries into your bet as well, where we could see Jared Goff in a must-pass situation for an entire half of football, which makes everybody's passing props look pretty darn good. So, it's we have a couple examples of Lions in game states where they're down by margin, and they are 50 attempts for Goff, and pretty decent opportunity for garbage time yardage.
Yep. I have a theory, which I don't think should be super controversial, but to give people some insight. So the way like alt spreads are calculated, it's not like team adjusted. Like every 9.5-point favorite, based on what the total is, they will be the same alternate spread price at -19.5. My theory is that there are certain type of team profiles that lend themselves particularly well to alternate spreads. Teams like, for instance, the Niners and the Ravens, who have the strength of the Niners. Well, let's talk about it like this. The Niners have an excellent running offense and a suspect rush defense and a pretty good pass defense. And so that lends well to extending leads because they can run the ball effectively with a lead, and it's difficult for teams to catch up against them because they're not able to run the balls effectively. You see that with Baltimore as well. Same thing. They have the best rushing offense in the NFL. Their rush defense isn't actually that good. Their pass defense is the best in the league along with Cleveland. And so just that kind of archetype of a team lends itself well to blowout victories, because all of a sudden you're going to have Jared Goff dropping back to pass with Nick Bosa and Chase Young pinning their ears back, and they're not going to be able to use, David Montgomery, Jahmyr Gibbs, the ground game as much if they get down. And on the other side, Christian McCaffrey is going to be able to extend the lead. So I think that is, that's a little thing that perhaps if it does get out to -7.5, and if you do want to take some alt spreads on the Niners, I think they lend themselves well as a team profile to do that.
Yep. You look no further than Green Bay Thanksgiving. Detroit. If this is a Detroit Baltimore type of outcome, kick your feet up, light a cigar. That would be just a delightful game state. I would be very happy with that. Detroit at the Bears. Another similar, all three games where you had, a pretty low completion percentage and 1 million targets by Jared Goff in comeback mode, and they just couldn't get there. So, I think that's best case scenario for me in terms of game state. And congratulations to you for getting through a receiving prop as your best bet against the Niners without mentioning your guy, Diamador Lenoir. We're not even picking on him. No, I'm very curious to see what the Niners defense does with their corners. Do they stick to their sides? Do they try to specifically key on Amon-Ra St. Brown? Because if it's Amon St. Brown in the nickel and they stick with Lenoir in the nickel, then it's going to be a matchup to watch.
Yes, Ambry Thomas hasn't been fantastic lately either.
He is not.
All right, let's pivot to the Southern Hemisphere. Talk Australian Open Women's Final. Qinwen Zheng gets through, having played surely the easiest draw in tennis history to get through to a final. She is +400 against destroyer of the world, Aryna Sabalenka, who's -550. After taking care of Coco Gauff in straight sets. Do you think Zheng has any chance in this one?
For the record, it's not a beauty contest here, man, in terms of who you beat. She did what was asked. She took care of business. And it's also not like Aryna Sabalenka had the world's toughest draw. She basically got a bye on week one. So it's, I don't take exception to your characterization, but I would just like it pointed out that that this market is it's tilted in the wrong direction for reasons that I am having trouble to wrap my head around. Sabalenka got through the boogeyman of the semifinals against Coco Gauff without really sweating. Like, it was a clean win from her ultimately. Although there were moments where I was like, okay, we're starting to see your level come down a bit from the peaks of what we saw over this fortnight. Whereas Zheng Qinwen is still on the come up, I believe. And if I have some Zheng to win at 12-1. It was far, far, far from the best price. I know there are people out there with 50s, 30s. Even that is tough to hedge at this current market and really make the most out of that. But I will also tell you that fair price should be somewhere around 250, 200 here, not 500, 400, whatever we're seeing. So, I'm still very clearly leaning dog with these prices. And I think ultimately, my position is sort of fortified by, if you want to find one other archetype out there for Zheng Qinwen's game, it's Elena Rybakina. Like, they are built similarly. They have a lot of the same strengths and weaknesses. And in particular, we're seeing Zheng blossom in a lot of ways because she's playing on the better courts with more protection, and she has an extremely high ball toss. And so her serve is it's better being on these show courts and having the roof closed a couple of times. So it's, that this is not a fluke. If you think it's a fluke, you haven't been paying attention to tennis for the last 18 months. And Zheng can absolutely push the right buttons to give Sabalenka trouble here. Sabalenka she can definitely run downhill with the best of them. She can if you don't have an A game that can match hers, you don't really stand a chance on her on court with her. Like, these are facts, but Zheng does have that. So sticking with my outright. We'll probably add some Zheng exotics just because I think there's a chance she's just shows up and is the better player. It's possible. That I'm not afraid to go against Sabalenka as well as she has played and as perfectly as these conditions match her strengths. She put pressure on herself to win 2 slams before she turns 25, and she turns 25 before the next slam, Jay. So the fact that there is still some, kind of mental hurdle for her here to get this championship, I think could ultimately matter. So let's go, Zheng.
Yep. She is
punch the ticket.
Yeah, Aryna is liable to lose any big match, regardless of the opposition. But yeah, she's obviously the favorite here for a reason. But Zheng, I think this is her price in this final is a good reminder that if you're backing a long shot in an outright before a tournament, if you can, try and back it each way. If the price of the outright is going to be divided by 2, because Zheng, as much as we love her and as much as she's got all this upside in the world, and she may well win this final, she was almost never going to be favored in the final against, Sabalenka or Goff or whoever came out of that side, most likely.
Yep.
Anything quickly on the men's side before
to piggyback on your point about the outrights, like if you're backing long shots in any tennis tournament, you must know implicitly you're hoping that there's going to be chaos. That the favorites will get knocked out and that you won't have to deal with this situation. There are people I know who had Casper Ruud 50-1 last year in the French Open, and he goes up against Djokovic, and you're like, oh, well, great, wonderful. I've got nothing. I can't do anything here. Like, this is, he's got about a 2% chance to win this match, right? So there's definitely when you're playing the long shots in these tournaments, you're just hoping for chaos, and you almost got it, but not quite. So yeah, the men's. By the way, if you're listening to this on Friday morning, decent chance that the Medvedev-Zverev match is still going on. If it is, I have pretty decent position on Medvedev in this match. I backed him money line. I backed him on the sets handicap. I think Medvedev wins 3-0, 3-1, and I think Zverev is overmatched in pretty much all the wrong ways in this matchup. And I think realistically that's going to be, we kind of talked about it, like who's going to have the easier path to the final. I think it's Medvedev because I think Sinner Djokovic is going to be war. Sitting tight on my Sinner ticket, not doing anything about it. You'll know the result of this if you're listening to this podcast. You'll already know. But I think he's got a coin. He's got a puncher's chance, and I think that market should be closer to a coin flip. So hopefully Sinner comes through. Hopefully he doesn't take too much damage, and we are looking at a Sinner Medvedev final. If this is a Djokovic Medvedev final, I don't know. I don't feel like Daniel has a ton of hope, but we've seen crazier things.
Indeed. Okay, let's close out with NBA Most Improved Player. Always a wonky market that has very often a fractured vote. We saw Ja Morant win with, I think, 37 first place votes a couple of years ago. I think we might be headed towards a similar situation where Tyrese Maxey very much in the Morant mold of, star-ish player who's averaging like 20 points per game, and they take a big leap up into the mid to high 20s while being on a very good team. He's minus 225, Alperen Sengun plus 275, Kobe White 12-1, Scotty Barnes 15-1, and then there's a big drop off. Emmanuel Quickley will not be winning this award. Jalen Williams is 80-1. Halliburton is the second favorite for a time. He's 80-1. As he kind of cooled and then has gotten hurt. Jalen Johnson, I don't think is going to win. He's 100-1. Derek White, 125-1. Don't think he will have the counting stats. Now, I think a lot of people are treating Maxey as a very vulnerable favorite. And I agree. I don't think he's locked to win this award by any means, just because of the fact that a lot of voters, they just don't look towards his archetype, which is already really good, turns into, all-star max contract type of player. But there are a subset of voters, and you can basically just look at the 37 people who have many voted for Morant, who do gravitate towards that archetype, who see that as the hardest leap to make. And that's why I think Maxey is very likely going to win this award, because I think that he is the only real player in that archetype now that Haliburton has fallen off. Now Siakam will take some of Haliburton's usage as well, that I think Maxey has a very high floor. And I don't see why he would start playing worse. So I think, going from 20 to 26 points per game, doubling his assists, having the story of replacing Harden, this team is going to be a 2 or a 3 seed. I think that Maxey at minus 225, I think that's about a fair price. But what do you think?
All right. So you're telling me my Alperen Sengun tickets are in trouble.
I think he is rightfully the second favorite. And if Maxey does fall over, if he goes cold and his efficiency has gone down, that's the one thing with his case, is that he's not been as efficient as the volume has risen. Yeah. But if he falls over, I think Sengun is pretty clearly the guy. And Sengun, his stat leap has been immense.
Yeah. So for the record, you got to make the All-Star team in order to win this award. You got to be a first-time All-Star. That's kind of that archetype. And I don't know that Sengun's going to get there. He deserves it, but we'll see. Yeah, I don't think he is either. And in general, the Rockets are starting to kind of fall apart, and I don't really know what's going on over there. So I had small stakes at huge prices on Sengun that I was kind of excited about, as he's risen now to the second choice. But I may exercise any opportunity I have to get off of those with Maxey before he gets into the minus 2,000 range. Because, we're coming up on the All-Star, the All-Star rosters being announced. And at that point, I know it's not impossible to be the most improved if you're not an All-Star, but there are so many players who literally, so many voters, I think, who just look at the first-time All-Star list and make their choice based on that.
Yep. I think so. Maxey, he has all of that kind of conglomerate of, good to great. And the other guys who went from, 15 points per game or less up to, 20, 22, that type of archetype. I just think between Sengun, White, Scotty Barnes, Jalen Williams, if you want to throw him in there, it's a bit difficult for him as a second-year player, even though he's had immense improvement. I just think that those guys are just going to cannibalize the vote. And the way that Maxey goes down is if one of Sengun, White, Barnes, or someone else of that ilk emerges, if they rise up and they get all of that type of vote, which is what I kind of thought was going to happen with Darius Garland the year that Morant won. But then the Cavs just fell off and he just didn't get that because DeJounte Murray and Jordan Poole and these guys were all cannibalizing his vote. And I think it's just going to be the same thing. And I think Maxey is going to get less than half the votes and still win fairly comfortably because I don't think there's a consensus behind someone else. Though I do think Sengun is the most likely still to rise up, but he needs the Rockets to go on a bit of a run.
Yep, okay. I dig all that. And just real quick, people are going to ask Rookie of the Year. Wemby is now heavy favorite. I'm extremely happy with us and the timing we had that conversation. And if you want to bet for Friday NBA, taking on the Thunder, we are going Pelicans -2.
Okay, like it. Go Pelicans. All right, don't forget to check out NBCSports.com for more information to help you with your wagers. Thanks to those watching on the NBC Sports YouTube channel. And if you're listening to us in podcast form, don't forget to rate and subscribe. And also a reminder to find all your favorite NBC Sports shows on Amazon Music. Just head to amazon.com/NBC Sports. From Jay Croucher and Drew Dinsick, good luck this weekend.